Well, hello everyone. Here we are for part 2 of the Adobe Basics training session. In the previous edition, we talked a little bit about how to set up a project. We talked about how to import material. We talked about how to scan that material in our browser. We talked about how to set in points and out points and how to drag and drop that material into our timeline, and a couple of little things within that timeline. But for the most part now, what we want to move on to is some fundamental editing techniques and how Adobe Premiere works on a very basic level. So what I'd like to do is yet again share my screen and pick up where we left off. So if you will spare me a moment while I make those changes here, we can take a look. So I do want to point out something before I go back into the Premiere project, which I still have open at the moment. But I want to open up FA2 and show you what happened while I was demonstrating these early steps in our project management. Do you notice here that while we were working, this Adobe Premiere autosave folder was automatically created? Don't ever kill this out of your folder. This should automatically generate, and it has backups of your Premiere project as you're working on it, and it is the thing that keeps the record of all your in points and your out points, and it is your really most important backup plan should your system crash. Now also I want to point out, so don't ever kill that. Also I want to point out that if you don't set this project up correctly to begin with, and you see that P on your desktop over here, or you see that Adobe Premiere autosave folder over here, and then you want to drag it into your project, it will look like it's going to work, but I promise you that will not work. If you don't follow these steps to set up the project to begin with, like we discussed in part 1 of this training session, you are going to regret it, because eventually your media is going to go offline, and that would be tragic, because then if you try to move your project from one location to another, or you try to come back to your project and you put it onto a jump drive to bring it into the lab, that will not work for you. Speaking of working on a laptop at home and being able to transport your material back and forth, Adobe Premiere, the versions we have in our lab is just a little bit older than anything that you might be downloading at home. So it's really important to keep that in mind, because while you can take an older version of a project created in an older version and open it in a newer version, you cannot take a newer version and open it in an older version. So these are not just transportable back and forth. It's really important to pay attention to the fact that if you have Adobe 2021 on your laptop at home, and for any reason you want to drag this folder off onto a jump drive and bring it into our lab to continue editing, you won't be able to do that if your version of Premiere is older. And you can find out what version of Premiere you have by going to that location, and it'll tell you. So for example, I have version 14, and so if you try to go in our labs, I think our labs are 12.4 or 12.5. So if you've worked on a newer version, you won't be able to transport that material into our lab. So let's try to get out of that. Okay. Thank you very much. I just had to click on that and I was able to get out. So let's pick up where we left off. We had been able to bring our material in. We've been able to move it around. I'm going to move this out of the way. We've been able to make it larger and smaller. And we're going to pretend that this is the project that you're working on for FA2. So let's say we want our project to begin with natural sound. Now, right now, the sound that we have is this piece of sound and this piece of sound. We're pretending that this is our reporter track that you're going to voice on your phone at home. You're going to use a voice memo. You're going to import it using your voice memo feature, export it, email that to yourself. however it is that you want to get it into your raw materials folder. So you're going to put that in with the audio that you've already recorded. You're going to put your natural sound in with whatever you've recorded. And so this is, let's pretend that's your reporter track, and let's pretend that this is your first sound bite. So one of the really cool things for Adobe Premiere is if we want to bring something new into our timeline and we don't want it to affect anything else that's already in there, then we can do what's called locking. I'm going to demonstrate these most important edit tools. So if I go to locking, I can lock down channel 1, which is what I'm going to want to do, because channel 1 is only for what we call primary sound. It is for your reporter track. It is for any sound bites or quotes that you pull out in audio form and use. And when we get to video, it's also for any stand-ups. Should you shoot a stand-up for your story, standing in front of the camera, holding onto a microphone, talking into that camera, that's what we call a stand-up. And the audio for that would belong on audio channel 1. We import natural sound, and we only use that on channel 2. So our SOP is, SOP being standard operating procedure, channel 1 is primary track, SOTs, or also we call those bites, and stand-ups. Channel 2 is for nats. So I'm going to go ahead over here, and I want to look, see I've labeled it, it was already labeled natural sound. So I'm going to double click on that because I can see that that's the nat sound I want to listen to. Let's see what we have here. I'm going to hit the space bar. I won't be using that. I won't be using that. I can see pretty much my sound is probably going to start around here.
When you added it up, did you get 72.4?
Okay, so this is that young man talking to his tutor, right? And so that's natural sounds of the interaction of him with his tutor. So let's pretend that I want to use that natural sound to begin my story, right? Then I'm going to set my in point. Let's pretend I want to use that natural sound all the way to there. There's my out point. And then because this is locked, when I drag this sound down and let it go, I can let it go on channel 2. It will not cover up anything that I've already laid down on channel 1. Natural sound goes there. So I'm going to keep channel 1 locked for a moment, and I'm going to click down here in channel 2 so that I can hear it. And if I only want to hear channel 2, I can hit S for solo, and that will only play channel 2 sounds. So I'm going to listen to that. Okay, so there's our natural sound. So now I'm going to unlock this, and I'm going to show you a couple of other little things. So there is a system here called linking. Linking is a tool that makes it so that anything I click on, if I had connected media, so let's say that I was bringing in a piece of video with natural sound attached to it. If I brought video and audio channel 1 and audio channel 2 in, but I wanted to edit them separately, let me see if I can import some audio that looks like that for you. Let me see. I'm going to do this because it would be easier for you to be able to see some of that sound. Okay, here's a copy. Here's a copy of my edit lecture. I'll just bring that in real quick. Okay, so I'm double clicking on that, and here is my edit lecture. So let's pretend I want to use this bit of sound.
Way, it's going to be much easier over the course of your career to go back in, find material that you
out point, drag it, and drop it. Okay, when I recorded this, it only recorded channel 1 audio because that's what Blackboard does, right? But you notice that it dropped in video 1 and audio 1. I don't have any natural sound recorded there, so it didn't drop any in there. It's not on the original file. So if I wanted to make an edit on this particular piece of material, if I click on it, because linking is off, white is off, blue is on, because linking is off, I could click on this separately and edit it separately. I could click on this and say, well, I don't need that because I'm not going to use any video in this project. So I could click on it and I could hit delete, and away goes that piece of video. However, oh, that's edit undo. That's your friend. Edit undo, edit undo. You can do like 10 or 20 of those to back up once you're trying things. So let's linking. If I click on it now that they're linked up, you notice that both are highlighted when I click on them. And so then anything I do, let's say I delete this, it would delete both video and channel 1 because those two elements are linked together. Edit, undo, right? If I unlink them, not only can I separate that, but then I can also pull that sound down to channel 2 if I wanted to. I can move it around, and I can do that independently of anything that I do on the video line. If I wanted to move this over here and move that over there, I can slide these things around. Now you notice that when I get to a certain point, this little black line shows up. That little black line is telling me, oh, excuse me. Okay. That little black line is telling me that something called snapping is on, which tells me if I just let go when I see that little black line, it'll automatically move my material closer together, right? But if I want to be really precise, sometimes snapping won't let me be precise because it's going to automatically jump from this location to that location. I can't mess with individual frames. It's really kind of finicky. So that is this upside down horseshoe looking tool. And if you want to be really precise and be able to move things frame by frame, take snapping off. And then if I want to look much more closely and highlight that little section and move it by a single frame, I can do that because snapping is not going to throw that material over to the left. So these are some of our key tools: blocking, linking, snapping. So those are 3 tools that you're going to want to know about. And then we've already looked at our counter here that tells us how far in we are. And we've already practiced making the slider work bigger and smaller. Okay? So a couple of other things that I want to point out to you. When I created my timeline here, you may notice it automatically created something over in this, oh, I'm sorry, over in this line. Do you see that this icon looks different? So here's audio only, audio only, audio only. Here's my video icon for, oh, okay, that's my editing lecture. So that has video and audio. So it's showing me in this icon that I have video and audio together. But then I have this icon here. This is actually my timeline. And that's what that icon looks like, and it sort of looks like a little mini timeline version. So it's really important to pay attention to this because it's currently slugged FA1 Daryl interview because that's the first piece of sound that I brought in, right? So the first piece of sound I brought in was Daryl interview, and because that was the first sound in, it automatically labeled my project that. And then I see this is the name of my timeline here, also showing up here. But let's say I want to change that. I could either click on here and rename through there, or better yet, I can just click in here and then click once again. Don't click on the icon, click in the window to the right, and I'm going to label that the name of my project, FA2 Smith L. And when I click out of that, you'll notice now my timeline is named the same as my project. My project here is called FA2 Smith L, and now I have that project open. And when I export this project, it'll automatically take on this name. I won't have to rename it. So that's just a little trick there. All right, so we've learned linking, we've learned snapping, we've learned locking, we've learned how to make these bigger, smaller. Now let's take a look at some edit tools. Oh yeah, I'm going to move this around. So notice, oh, there's snapping. I can't do what I want to do with that, so I'm going to undo that. And this enables me to move it frame by frame. You can see as I roll my finger to the left or to the right, I can go frame by frame, or I could go in here and get really explicit. So a couple of things. On any edit project that you're working on in my class, you never want, I'm going to move this gnat sound over, you never want your voice to start, ooh, sorry, you never want your voice to start at exactly the beginning of your timeline. Because when we export this project, when you think about how material is used in a newscast, we need just a little beat, because sometimes somebody's going to want to say something in the control room, like the director is going to say, okay, ready to roll this tape, take this tape. Or in the radio station, they're going to say, ready to take this cart, take this cart. And we don't want it to be right up at the front. So we're going to move, if you want to begin with primary sound, which is your voice, we're going to move, we're going to put the scrubby to exactly 1 second into your timeline, and we're going to move it here. Okay, let's pretend then, so that's there. Let's pretend we want to hear natural sound, but we're not going to want to hear it full, but we want to hear natural sound established just a little bit before we start talking. Then we could just pull that over, and we can have a second of natural sound, and then our reporter track will come in. Let's see what that sounds like.
Yes and no. Before, it was definitely different, and it was fun.
Now, we wouldn't want to obviously have a talking voice underneath him talking at the same time, but this is really more for demonstration purposes. So we got some sound going there, and then our track comes in. So let's pretend that's a lawnmower. That'd be fine to have the lawnmower for the first second, as long as it's not important that we hear it full. If we want to hear the lawnmower full before our track comes in, we're going to move these over to the right, and what we'll do is we'll want to adjust the audio levels so that we can hear that all the way, and then we'll bring it down, and I'll show you how to do that in just a second. Let's pretend I don't like where this natural sound begins. Let's pretend I want this natural sound to begin here, okay? So there's a couple ways I can make that edit. And here are where these edit tools come in. I can select the razor tool and then slide over here and click on that part of my line, right? And that has put a break between these two sections. Then I go back and get my pointer tool, highlight the section I want to delete, hit delete. Then I can either drag my sound over, or I can click in that empty space in my timeline and hit delete. And you'll notice that that section of sound now is located at the beginning of my timeline. Okay, so let's pretend I want it to start actually after she says, right? So I can also drag this to the right, and then that's where that sound would start. Let's say I want to take it where it starts, right there, right? Then I can use that. I can either, as long as I have raw material in the bin, I can go back to the original digital source by dragging and have more sound, or I can drag it and have less sound, and then I can delete, and there I am at the beginning of my timeline, and I have that sound at the very beginning. Okay, so there's not a lot of sound there, but that's the gist of how that would work. right? So let's say I want that for a second, and then I want, oh, arrow right, I want exactly a second, then that's where I want my track to come in, okay? Let me make it bigger so I can make it exact. Make it like here. I'm gonna bring it back out. Let's back it up and see what that sounds like, because I'm gonna see and hear both of them.
Yes and no. Before, it was definitely different, and it was fun, but like...
So as you can tell, I can hear that sound simultaneously on channel 1 and channel 2. They're different sounds. This could be my lawnmower. This could be me talking about landscapers. That would be how I would layer that sound here. So the slice tool or the razor tool, get it, select, pointer, point, delete, slide, expand. That's how we use those tools in Adobe Premiere. So those are the most important editing tools. And so we've now made it over to the very last page of our handout, and I'm going to show you some things about how to adjust our audio levels so they're clean, so that they match, so that they do exactly what we want them to do, and they follow standard operating procedures. And so I need you for about another 10 minutes, and then we'll be wrapped up with this section of the training. So we're on page 4 of the handout. We're going to talk about audio SOP. The standard operating procedure for audio is really important. It's almost always one of the big issues that we run into. So right now, I can't tell you how much sound, if we're looking over here at the right, I can't tell you how much sound is coming from this track and how much sound is coming from this piece of sound. I can't tell, because when I'm looking at them over here, my audio meters, that sound is all mixed up together. So let me play that.
Before, it was definitely different, and it was fun, but like...
So I can see their sound from both, but I can't tell how much. So the first thing I want to do is I want to split my audio so that I see channel 1 on the left and I see channel 2 on the right. And I do that by going to Windows, Track Mixer. Don't select Clip Mixer. Don't use Clip Mixer. Use Track Mixer, and then select your project. Because I renamed it FA2 Smith, that's my project. And this sub window will pop up. I'm gonna, as long as I will notice, do want you to notice one thing. If I have a channel locked down, you won't be able to click on this. So I'm going to unlock it so that you can see, as long as it's unlocked, I'll be able to see both my audio meters for channels 1, 2. Notice this is 3, 4. We won't be using either one of those. But for channel 1, I want it to turn to the left, and I just click on the L. I don't need to drag it around, just click on the L. And on channel 2, I want to click on the R. Now look at what happens over here in my VU meters. Watch this.
It was definitely different.
Oh, I can see better
like,
what's contributing to my total sound. So that's really important. So remember, primary sound, reporter track, SOTs, reporter stand-ups, if we're working in the TV section of the class, those all go on channel 1 only. They should be panned to the left. Nat sound, channel 2 only, should be panned to the right. Let's talk about those levels. Full sound in audio land, in television land, is -12. -12 is full sound, and natural sound, when it's underneath, is somewhere between -36 and -42. It sort of depends on the sound. If it's kind of a backgroundy noise that's not too overwhelming, then we could probably maybe get it up to 36. But if you're in an air-conditioned space and you're just trying to get some room noise in, you might actually have to boost it up a little bit. If you're in a protest and people are yelling and screaming, you actually might have to get it down here a little bit. But generally speaking, we want to see our NATS levels between 36 and 42. So I'm going to adjust my primary sound on the left first. And I'm going to do that by soloing channel 1, right? So I'm going to solo channel 1.
Yes and no.
And I'm going to play it. So I'm not getting all the way up to 12, so I'm going to pause it. And because I made this line big enough to see a little bit more, this white line pops up. And I can raise or lower that. And when I raise or lower the line,
and it was fun, but like
the audio
the pandemic made
raises
you realize
and
some
lowers.
things.
So what we want is we want our sound to consistently be at 12. So it can go a little above 12, a little below 12. Let's do that.
Made you realize some things. And I would say quarantine was...
That's looking pretty good. I'm pretty happy with that. Let's check this level.
That you have created in the past. Edit.
Now that's a little loud. So did you notice that I'll play it again.
That material and use it in a newer, different way.
A little bit
so for example,
yellow all the way up to the 6. That's a little too loud. So I'm going to go in. I'm going to pull this down a little bit.
That you have created in the past. Edit that material.
Maybe even a tiny spridge down there.
And use it in a newer, different way.
Okay, so that's pretty good. It's okay if a couple of them go slightly above. So I'm going to go in. I'm going to trim up this audio a little bit to make it clearly. I've paused there. Clearly I paused there. So I'm going to move this over. Most importantly, when I'm adjusting my audio levels, I want to make sure, now these white lines, they're never going to line up unless they're coming from the same speaker, right? But if we're going from like your reporter track to a soundbite, right? Your reporter track to a soundbite, they're recorded in different environments, and so we want to make sure that we are capturing that sound the way we want it to be captured, and we want to play it back right. So let's play between the two of them, keeping our eyes on -12, and make sure that they're consistent from the track to the side.
And I would say quarantine was fun as well.
Find material that you have created in the past, edit that material, and use it in a newer, different way.
Okay, so that's pretty good. Now it's not exactly good because look, if I heard that, I heard that little breath in at the end. So I'm just gonna pull that in a little bit. Let's test it, make sure it's clean at the end. Okay, that's pretty good. So if I wanted to be even more precise, another way I could do it is I could go and zoom all the way in, and then I could get my pointer tool and I could, or my razor tool, well, I might even click one before that. I'm gonna get my pointer tool, highlight this, and I think actually I might come in one more frame. So as long as I'm in all the way, I can come in frame by frame, right? But if I'm not in all the way, snapping and the way the system works won't let me do that either. So look, then I've got consistent, and then I also want to move this over just a little bit because there's a little bit too much of a pause in between those. So let's see.
And I would say quarantine was fun as well.
Find material that you have created in the past,
so
edit that material.
All right, and then let's pretend we want to pick up his soundbite from here to here. Because I know that that's going to be at about the same level because it's the same guy, with the exception of this little peak here, I could probably turn it right up, and then let's see how that plays.
And use it in a newer, different way.
I like to do things.
Oh, I got a little bit of a pause. Got to get it closer. Slide it over.
Different way.
I like to do things on my own.
Okay, that's looking pretty good. So now I'm going to go in, I'm going to solo my Nats channel, and I'm going to look at my Nats. And like I said, I really want my Nats generally as a bed to be consistently underneath my sound at somewhere between 42 and 36. Okay, so it's generally good, except for what's happening here is it gets a little louder here than I want it to be, and it's a little bit of a distraction. So the last thing I'm going to show you is how to zoom in on some audio and maybe dip it down or maybe boost it up in cases where you don't want to necessarily affect the whole track. You want something to raise or lower in a particular point. So let's Let's do this. Okay, first of all, I'm going to set my general level. Okay, I'm going to pull that down just a little bit. And now I'm my general. Okay, so what I want to do, I'm going to pull the whole thing up a little bit so that even though she talks loud here, that's looking pretty good for general. Okay, then I'm going to zoom in. So my scrubby is right on that. I'm going to zoom in. Maybe not quite so far. Here's that piece of sound. Let's pretend I want to bring this little section down because it interferes with what he's saying there. I'm going to choose this pen tool. I'm going to click on the pen tool, and I'm going to give myself a few dots on this line. And when I click on it, it gives me dots. Don't go too crazy with the dots. But let's say I want to do 4 or 5 on there because I have a long piece of sound. Then I'm going to go down. I'm going to get my pointer tool. And then I'm going to drag this down because I want this part to go down. Now I could do it with one, but this will make it a little easier. And you may notice I can slide these to the right and the left, right? So I can make all kinds of, I can make it go up in that one place and down in that. I can make it the other. But let's take a look at this. Let's see what this looks like. All right, so that kind of holds on to that consistency of the gnats by bringing down that annoying noise. If I had an annoying noise that I wanted to get out altogether, like a sneeze or a cough or something like that, I could do 3 dots and just bring that one all the way down. That way I wouldn't hear that annoying noise, right? And so it's almost imperceptible. Let's pretend that I want to put a gnat's pop into my story, okay? I want that natural sound, instead of going down low, I want to go in the opposite direction. I want to stop talking, and I want it so that that gnat sound comes full, and then there's more talking. So I'm going to move this out of the way, right? And then I'm going to split this track right here, and I'm going to go to my edit tool, and I'm going to click on it. So now it's split in 2. And I'm going to grab this and drag it over here. So let's say instead of it going low, I want it to come full, right? Now I want to ease it up. So I might come up at a little bit of an angle, right? And then come down at a little bit of an angle. Maybe I want to move that over a little longer, right? And then maybe I want that to be even with what it was on the other side. So let's pretend that's where I want it to come full, and then I want my reporter track to come back in there, right? At that point, let's see what that sounds like. Let's watch the sound real quick and see what it looks like. Okay, so it's not going long enough, so I'm going to slide that over. I'm going to slide that over. I'm going to wait to bring that down until over here, right? And then I'm going to, so let's take a look at that. Okay, so what you may notice, I've been able to get it all the way up to 12, but I can't quite get it. I mean, it's close, but it's not all the way there, right? So if I wanted to get it all the way to 12, but I can't raise my little white line any further, I have one more trick. I can right-click on this, right-click on it, and go to, where is this? Audio gain. If I go to audio gain, I can increase the amount of sound electronically that I did not record in the field properly the first time. So I'm going to always, if I'm going to have to resort to this, I want to do it in small increments. So I'm going to adjust my gain by increments of 3. Now, when I click on OK, I want you to watch what happens to the look of this audio. Watch what happens. Did you see it go up? So now I have done an electronic boost to that piece of sound. Really important to pay attention to that, because sometimes in the field you don't get enough sound and you need to boost it up. But do be careful, because if you boost audio up in this way and you boost it too much, it will introduce hiss in the back of your audio. So you want to be really careful about that. So let's see if we got it all the way up to 12. Okay, so that's good. Now it's got a lot of mic handling there, and I don't really want to hear all of that mic handling if it were a real piece, but it demonstrates the point. This project begins with natural sound for 1 second, and then my track comes in. And then track, 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 track. Nat sound full pop. That's called a pop. Then it comes back down again, and my track continues. And then here's a sound bite. Let's pretend that's the sound bite that I have, and my closing track. And there we go. Let's pretend I want my natural sound to trail out just before I get to this sound bite. I can use, again, oh, sorry, my cursor needs to be there if that's what I want to see. All right. So I can do my pen tool, and I can do dot, 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 dot. Then I'm going to go back here. I want my sound to pretty much trail out by about there. And I can actually let that sound fade down just a little bit at the end. So let's pretend this is my whole project, and that's what I want my project to look like. Let's play it.
Yes and no. Before, it was definitely different. And it was fun, but like, you know, the pandemic made you realize some things. And I would say quarantine was fun as well.
Find material that you have created in the past, edit that material, and use it in a new or different way.
I like to do things on my own, but like...
Okay, so let's pretend that's the end of your project. You have learned about front pad at the beginning. The last thing you want to pay attention to is what we call back pad. So let's pretend that this is the last word on my own. That's the end of my story. My story ends at 28:03. I need to have 2 seconds of back pad if I have natural sound there, so that it doesn't end abruptly. Now this is the end, it's a sound bite. So the sound bite, I don't care if a sound bite ends at the end. We just don't want it to end like right up against that piece of sound. You want to give yourself just a little bit of a moment.
Did it in a new or different way.
I like to do things on my own.
Do you notice it's got just a little bit of a beat after it so that it doesn't end? Because if we end that story right at the end of this and we export it, it's going to feel like we clipped the end of the story.
Things on my own.
It just feels a little too tight. So we're going to just give it a little bit of room. And if you really want to, you could use the pen tool to at the end of that sound, do, and then you can use the pointer and you can pull that sound down at the end, right? So that we don't really hear it, but it's still there.
Oh.
So it's still there at the end. If you're ending with natural sound, we want 2 seconds of natural sound before the story ends, and then you can fade out in that last section, just like this. All right, so there's our project. We're done, we're edited. Look at that. Now we're going to export it. The instructions for how to export are in the handout, but I want to point out a couple things. If you just have one element highlighted and you go to export this project, it will only export that one highlighted option. So what you want to do is either have nothing highlighted, or you want to click and highlight everything, or edit, select all. I like the edit select all option. Then you go File, Export, Media. And a sub window will pop up. These are all the different formats you could export something in. You could MPEG 2, MPEG 4, JPEGs, H.264, right? All of those are things that we can export. We're going to pick waveform audio, and there's only one preset for waveform audio. When later in the semester you're going to have different presets you need to think about, but we only have one 16-bit waveform in here, so we're going to click on that. Then we're going to click on the blue window right here, and if you didn't label your timeline, you need to go ahead and label your project here, FA2 Smith L. And then you want to tell it to put this exported media into your project folder, save. And then hit export. Boom, boom. This is only 28 seconds of audio, so it went out really quick. Let me minimize this and show you. So now you see I have my raw material folder, I have my exported WAV file, I have my Premiere project, and I have my autosave folder. So those are all correct. And then for FA2, you're also going to put in your retooled script that follows broadcast script writing style, and we're going to put that in there as well. And then you're going to actually turn this entire folder, you're going to drag the entire folder into the OneDrive under FA2 assignment. The whole folder, I want everything, because then if I can download it at my end and I can open your project seamlessly and everything is there and everything opens properly, I know that you set it up properly to begin with. And so that's going to be a really important test for did you follow the instructions for project management in setting your project up properly. Remember, you cannot open the project in OneDrive. You can only copy it into OneDrive. So don't try to open Premiere in OneDrive. It doesn't have Premiere in OneDrive. It's just a place where you're transferring files. So do not try to open your folder in there. One thing you'll want to do before you turn a project in, though, anytime you export, you want to listen to it and make sure that the exported project is exactly what you wanted. So let's do that now.
Yes and no. Before, it was definitely different. And it was fun, but like, you know, the pandemic made you realize some things. And I would say quarantine was fun as well.
Find material that you have created in the past, edit that material, and use it in a new or different way.
I like to do things on my own.
So there you go. Always listen to a project all the way through before you turn it in, because sometimes what you think you exported is not what you actually exported. And then in the end, you'll go to your, oh, I have that OneDrive elsewhere. You'll go to the OneDrive and you'll copy that whole folder in, and you will be done with that project. So that's it for Editing 101 Part 2 or Part 2 or Part B, and hopefully that will cover you and all the bases that you need for getting going in Adobe Premiere and to get a tune-up for any instruction for this FA2 assignment. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me. Thank you for your time, and I look forward to seeing you the next time I see you, either in class or in lab. Okay.